My name is Jason Stoneback and I work for Neptune Technology Group as a product specialist. Today we're going to tear apart a 3-inch high-performance turbine and bring it back up using the same parts. For convenience, I've removed the cover bolts. When you jostle the cover, you pull out the unitized measuring element, also referred to as the UME. Here you have a register, a cover, and the measuring element all combined. This is what we consider our unitized measuring element, our UME. I'm going to set this aside for a moment. If we look inside of our main case, you see there's a seal tube that has fallen over. That seal tube goes on the inlet side. There's a keyed mark on the part. It has a flat surface and a slanted surface. The slanted surface, as you see when it's in the main case, mounts to the slanted surface of the turbine element. As you can see, it just slides in there to that keyed portion. Now we're done with the main case. We're going to actually break down the unitized measuring element at this point. So we're now going to break down the unitized measuring element. As you can see again, it's the register, the cover assembly, and the turbine element. I've already removed the seal pin from the register, so I can turn this a quarter turn and the register comes off. Looking on top of the cover, you can see the calibration screw as well as the vent screw, which is equipped on all of our large meters. So I'm going to place the cover assembly now down on top where the register was sitting, and I'm going to remove 4 of the 5/16 bolts, which will allow me to pull off the turbine element. So we've now removed the 4 5/16 bolts. At this point, do not just pull the turbine element up, otherwise you're going to have gears go everywhere. I'm actually going to hold the turbine element, put my hand on the cover, and flip it over. If you slightly jostle the top, you should be able to pull the cover assembly loose and then hold the turbine element in your hand. Here we have a couple gears. We have a magnet drive gear, a pinion gear, calibration vane gear. There's a long side and a short side. Always make sure the long side goes down towards the turbine element. What we call a foot gear, and the foot gear rests in a drive slot that mates with the calibration gear. At this point, I'm going to remove the 3 1/4-inch nuts from the turbine element inlet and outlet, and I'm going to break this apart. I've removed the 3 1/4-inch nuts from the turbine element. At this point, you're looking at the outlet and the inlet side of the turbine element. You don't want to snatch these apart because there's a small ball bearing inside the unit. So I'm going to just slide these 3 bolts out. And I'm holding the outlet side up. I'm going to pick the outlet side up, and then inside this rotor, and I can set the inlet down, but inside this rotor is a small ball bearing. And then you just have the inlet left, and you can see the gears inside the inlet. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to put everything back together, making sure that I get that ball bearing in the end of the turbine rotor, setting that inside the inlet, and then placing the outlet cover back on. At this point, I'm going to put the bolts back through the turbine element, as well as put the 1/4-inch nuts to lock it into place. Now I've tightened the inlet and outlet back together using the 3 nuts that we had. To make sure the turbine hasn't bound up by any means, or if you've got it together correctly, I'm going to blow through the turbine and make sure that it spins freely and it comes to a smooth stop. As you can see, the turbine's spinning and it comes to a nice smooth stop. Now we're ready to put our gears back on top of the turbine element. We have 4 gears, as you remember taking them off: our calibration gear, our foot gear, our magnet gear, and our drive pinion gear. To start with, we're going to take our foot gear, and there's a slot and a little post that we're going to make sure that it lines up. So once that's placed, you can see that the gear is towards the calibration gear location. On our calibration gear, we have a long gear and a short gear. We want to make sure that long gear is down towards the turbine element. We have our drive pinion. Our drive pinion has a D-shaped hole inside of it, so it's also going to be on the D-shaped hole, D-shaped post. sitting here. So when you put this on, it'll actually lock in. You can feel it lock. And the last gear we put on is our magnet gear. Now once we have all these gears in place, we should be able to blow through the turbine element again and see all the gears operating smoothly together. So you can see the gears turning on top. Now we have to get our turbine element back inside of our cover. This post here is actually going to align with the machined hole inside of our cover. And if we look inside the cover, there's also a gear, and that gear is going to mate with our calibration gear. So when you're placing the turbine element back into the cover, make sure that that machined hole and the post of the calibration gear align. At that point, we have our turbine and our cover put together successfully. We have to put the 4 bolts back in, and then we'll be ready to put it back into the main case. Okay, so we've put our 4 bolts inside of our turbine element. We're now back attached to our cover assembly. If you look at this, having the turbine element and the cover, this is what we call our cover assembly. Once I put the register back on the cover assembly, we've got it back up to the level we call unitized measuring element. Now, when you're doing this in practice, make sure you put a seal pin in to secure the register where it cannot be removed. Now, remember there was a slanted face and a flat face of a turbine element. The slanted face is the inlet side of the turbine meter. So when you go to put it back in the meter, this slanted face is just going to seal against that seal tube we placed in there earlier. Now we've dropped it in, we'll put in the remaining cover bolts, and we've completed the breakdown session for the 3-inch HP turbine.